little tour of what the exhibit is about this year. And the name of the exhibit is Lost and Found.
Lost and Found.
It's great. So tell us what inspired that focus for this year.
Well, you know, I named it Lost and Found because it occurred to me that, you know, a big part of my process is getting lost in an environment. And, you know, we all rush from project to project and busy. I'm very busy. I know you're a very busy person. You guys are all probably busy too. And we do that. You know, society makes us do that. And technology makes it easier and easier for us to multitask and rush. And I'm even talking fast, you know. So part of my process is to get into natural environments and slow down and get lost in it. And really become aware on every level of sensory awareness where I am to be in the moment. And then, because I'm so interested in light and reflection and color in nature, I started a few years ago introducing reflective matter into nature. And how I do that is by installing and doing environmental installations of mylar, foil, mirrors, cellophane, anything that will catch and bounce light, that will change the color of something, you know, and make me look at it a different way. And that is where the found comes from, because it's like, what can I find in these places that I'm at that comes naturally from them, and then also I can manipulate to find a different point of view from. So that's what I've been doing, and over the years I photograph and videograph those things for documentation, to keep, you know, a record for myself and for reference. And you know, last year or the year before, I forget exactly when, I realized that some of the photography that I was doing was actually standalone, beautiful on its own. I never really looked at it that way. I used the documentation as a reference, again, as my sketchbook. It's my photo-video sketchbook of things that I've experienced in nature through just being there or through manipulating it. So, you know, I keep these records and reference them, but I never take them into the studio with me. When I get to the studio, I rely on calling up the muse, you know, of what that experience brought me to. And then I paint, and we'll see the paintings in the next room. However, we noticed, again, that some of these were standalone beautiful, so this year I decided that I would exhibit the sketchbook, and that's what these are.
So initially when I saw the name Lost and Found, I thought it was going to be a complete sort of departure from the previous exhibit, but I think in a way, as I'm listening to you, you still have to immerse in the environment in order to sort of show what's reflected and what you're experiencing.
Absolutely.
And so in a way, I feel like that.
Right, the last show was immersion.
Still there, because you really have to focus and be in the moment in those environments to really capture what's there.
Right.
So you can't sort of just be passing through and not be absorbing those things.
No, at least I can't be. I need to be fully immersed and get lost. And so I have. And then, quite by accident, we were taking some goofy shots, me and a student of mine, playing with the reflection and how much we loved it. And we found that these funny shots that I was taking were actually creating environments inside the environment. So one of my favorite pieces, and I'm just going to direct you over here, is this particular piece that I call Blue Glint. And when people see this piece, why it's become one of my favorites is because how it really messes with people's perspective. And it really, they get lost until they find what it is from talking with me. So very often people have come to me and said, "Oh, tell me where this lake is. I've been here before." And they go on and tell me a whole story about this lake that they were at. And then they say, "So it's, you know," and I say, "Actually, it's a piece of mylar on the beach next to a rock in Maine." And they say, "What?" And they look closer, and yes, this is seaweed. And this is a sheet of mylar laying on the beach. And the blue is the sky above. It was a flawlessly blue, deep blue day that day. I do no photo manipulation. There's no photoshopping or anything. It was just a super blue sky reflected on a mirrored piece of mylar, which was bouncing light against the stone here, and then reflecting the stone in it as well. So the stone in the sky reflected in the mylar, which is casting a glint on the stone because it's a mirror. So all this stuff is happening in here, but yet it's created a whole other landscape. And that is the imagery that I carry in my mind when I spend time with my installations. And that is the imagery that then comes back while I'm painting. I'm an intuitive painter. I don't plan my paintings out like, well, today I'm going to paint this line. You know, it's all about, you know, how the materials speak to me. I mean, I can spend 2 or 3 days just preparing materials because I'm process driven, you know, and
but there's room for spontaneity.
Exactly.
Because you can't plan this in nature. Mess with you. You can't really plan.
Oh, no.
I'm going to capture this today and then it rain or something.
Right. And whenever I am doing environmental installations, I've had people who have either been with me assisting or have observed them say to me, my God, you need a lot of patience to do this. Because the wind just comes, you know. And I'll look at them and say, well, Mother Nature is my collaborator. So I always have to be ready for her point of view.
Yes.
And there's no fighting anyone, right? So it's really quite wonderful what she lends to the pieces, you know, and you know, a lot of this was created because of, you know, bends in the ground or maybe a little wind gun underneath or something. You know, there's always something. These pieces on this wall were done in the same place, but on a different day. You can see that the sky has a different color. Of course, there's clouds involved. The Mylar is reacting differently. And, you know, it's really quite beautiful as well. And it's ethereal. You know, I really get lost in these, especially because I can't really tell if I'm looking at a mountain range or what is it? Yeah, so people are like, wow, where are these mountains? But they're not, it's a rock. You know, it's just the angle at which I shot this rock with Mylar in front of it. So
it almost forces you to just take a closer look. You're like, am I seeing what I'm seeing here?
Yeah.
It's really great.
You know, and so I love the abstraction and what happens, you know, when these pieces exhibit what they do to me, you know. So I don't consider myself a photographer. I do consider myself an environmental installation artist, and painter, you know. My paintings in the next room, which we can look at, are made up of traditional and non-traditional materials mixed. So there I leave a lot of room for spontaneity too, because I do, when I'm in these places doing my installations, gather a part of the place. So I'll dig down and get some clay out, or like in the first piece here, I at one point found a particularly beautiful purple sand. And I just gathered a little bit of it to incorporate somehow and there found its place. I don't plan where the materials are going to land in the pieces. I predominantly paint this way. These are a new direction where I've included the photography behind the painting a little bit, but not throughout. So you'll see there are big swaths of, you know, applied pigment and clay, but there's also, you know, a part of it, I just decided that, you know, I'd lay some of that in the background because the imagery was powerful for me this time. It's the first time I've ever brought the photography into the studio. These paintings here are my more traditional approach. I shouldn't say that word. These are my more dominant approach, using traditional and non-traditional materials. Again, there's clay from the place, worked in alongside pigment, and I've used layers of epoxy resin, and that's what pulls up and causes the submersion and suspension of color and image in the pieces. I like the idea of being able to include a part of the place in the piece that's recalling an experience in a place. So I know that sounds a lot of layered talk, but you can see I work in layers, and so that's how my work speaks. Again, I'm process driven. I can spend days just, you know, mixing the colors and deciding, you know, which format I'm going to use. Will it be a square? Will it be a horizontal? Will it be a canvas? Will it be a panel? You know, I lay out several at the same time so that I can be as spontaneous as I need to be. The interesting part about the spontaneity of my work is that once I get to the part where I'm actually applying and making a series, I have to really consider the chemical properties of the epoxy resin and making it stick to itself and to the materials and working within time constraints. So I do have some limits in what I do, and I do have a lot of intuitive time. So I've developed a really interesting process for myself. You know, I invite you to come look at the paintings closely and be able to look between and see where the layers line up. One of the things that the epoxy resin really gives to my work is the ability for light to pass through it. Again, I'm really interested in light and reflection in nature, so it's really nice to be able to put some nature in it, but then let the light pass through the epoxy and bounce back out again. Like when light hits light colors, it bounces back at you. When the lighting comes down here, it lights from inside the layers. And so there's a nice way that light can naturally pass through the work as well as around it and on it. So
that's great. And we're back to the deep blue.
Yes, I see you dressed to match it.
We'll take a picture there later. But I think as with the work, there's so much, all it's process driven. There's a little bit of anthropologist in you. Even though there are no other people or no natives, the environment is the native technically.
Right.
But I think the way you approach it, it's almost like literally you're there, you're sort of embedded in what's going on to really sort of capture everything. And it's really, you can call it however you like, but I think you have to be there. Like I think you just have to sort of let it come to you in a way and not make any assumptions or kind of like no expectations. So whatever comes,
right,
this is what you're going to be working with.
Yes, and not every piece is as successful as I'd like it to be. These are the successful ones. I work on many pieces at the same time, letting things happen in them. It's not like I just don't have any idea of what they will be. Like I know once I've mixed all my colors and materials and prepared everything, what I'm going to be working with and how, what will be incorporated and what won't be this time around. How do I feel today in terms of my recollection, and what of those natural experiences is coming to the surface for me? That kind of stuff I become very aware of, and and that isn't so dictated to me as I do make those decisions. And then I let the materials respond and react to how I'm applying them. Yeah, and I allow for them to, take on a little life of their own because of what they are and, being natural living materials.
Yeah, so true. So what have you heard from visitors or from people who love your art this time around?
People have been extremely responsive. They've been really happy to see the photography and very interested to learn that I just consider it my sketchbook. So they're like, wow, that's your sketchbook, But then it makes sense when they look at the paintings and they say, oh, of course, that's what you're painting about, so that makes sense. And then the colors, because I've gotten a little bolder in this particular group of work than I had in the past group of work, and so people have come in and just been really receptive to the blues.
Yeah, it's a nice contrast, and usually, I think there was some vibrancy. I think there was one piece, even from the last exhibit, that was like a little surprised because I wasn't expecting it as you're looking at sort of the calmer hues you were using, and then there was one that just popped. So now I think there's more pop, and then it's sort of up and down. It's almost like in 1 second it's like, oh, this is really bright, and then it just comes down again. And these are definitely deeper than those two in terms of your work.
There's certainly new palette introductions happening here. Yeah.
So what do you call these two pieces? Let me see mine.
These are a diptych and finding and balance.
Ooh.
And together it's finding balance, but separately I believe they stand alone very confidently.
Yeah.
but together I think they make a bold statement as well.
Yeah, and I think they're independent, but at the same time, I think they're so complementary. There's no deep sort of competing.
Yeah, they were
interest.
made obviously at the same time, but I hadn't really gone into making them as a diptych.
Okay.
I was working simultaneously on them and realized that they were speaking to each other as I was working on them. I worked on something else alongside them that was completely different, but those two began to work together with me. And so I knew that eventually they may turn into a diptych, and so, you know, I allowed them to be, although they weren't intended that way, and that's why I gave them names that can go together or separately.
Yeah, that's great. So what lessons would you say toward the end of such a long process, and now to have the exhibit that you've learned about yourself or even about your art as well?
I think patience and passion come to mind. I think that, you know, we really must have patience, not just with the external, but with the internal as well. I have to allow myself to grow. I have to allow myself to make mistakes, and I have to allow myself to accept the external as part of feeding the internal. And I think that really happens for me because of the fact that my work takes time. And when I'm doing installations in particular, I can never tell how long those are going to take me. You know, it could take me a half an hour to do something, or it could take me, you know, 2 days because the wind didn't cooperate. So I need to find my patience, you know. And then passion is, you know, passion is the love of the thing. And I believe that if you love something, you keep with it, you know. And I'm very committed to the things I love, you know, and art making is one of the things in my life that I love, and I can't help doing it. And so my passion is there, and I found it, you know, and because of that, I just don't quit. I think that, you know, if you don't have passion for something, you quit it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just don't quit.
Just keep going. And I think that's where the balance also comes in, because, you know, you may have passion, but not necessarily the patience to sort of sustain and keep going. So, you know, and I think I think it's so fluid that you find those lessons in every piece. So even though it seems like, oh, this is so different because it doesn't look the same as one piece, but I think they kind of speak to one another in the end. I don't know if during the process they were, but
they do.
Yeah,
they do, and I agree with you that, I agree with what you just said. I love the work. And, you know, it's a good feeling to put a show up and have that, you know. You work so hard on something, and I have to tell you, this month of November has seemed to just fly by, and I'm like, what? It's time to take the show down. What do you mean, you know? Because I've loved living with it in this environment. It's very different to be with the work in the studio. You know, my studio is smaller than this, and it's a different environment. It's very busy, you know, because I'm busy in it. When I bring it out of the studio and into this white box, and it breathes on its own. Wow. Yeah. You know, and that's why I encourage people to come see the show and be in the breathing space with it. And not just mine, but any artwork. You know, visit galleries, do some gallery tours for yourself, a stroll once in a while, just go see what's happening, you know, in the art world in terms of what it can give you as a breathing space. You know, go get lost and find something, you know. And and I would just say there are a lot of great shows happening in this whole gallery district right now. And, you know, just take yourself out of yourself for a minute.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for coming in.
I'll be back very soon.
Great.
I feel like time flies so much. I was just here, but I'm glad we always have a chance to sort of really, take the art in
Thank
and
you.
then invite other people to do the same.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's so hard. People just go from one thing to the next, but you can slow down here.
Yeah, don't breeze by. Just
Yeah.
take it in. for a
Take your
minute.
time, lounge, walk around.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
regardless of the weather, it's like I've been here like on different temperatures, like hot, cold, fall, and
Oh, yeah, it just takes you out of the world.
Yeah,
It's a
seasonally.
whole new environment, yeah.
you can escape from whatever.
Yeah.
So, thank you. So we're gonna go back to the front and take some more shots.
Great, thanks.